Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining Luxury Institute's webinar on reigniting the luxury hospitality industry. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared after the session. The recording will also be available on Luxury Institute's website and our YouTube channel. Please feel free to share your questions using the Q&A box located on your screen. We will address as many questions as possible during the last 10 minutes of the session. If you would like to connect privately with our panelists and guests, contact information will be shared at the end of the session. Now I'd like to hand it over to Luxury Institute CEO, Milton Pedraza. Milton?
Thank you, Katie, and thank you all for joining our program today. I will say that I'm very impressed that just about every luxury and premium hospitality brand, large or small, is represented in your audience today. So we're very grateful for that. We have a terrific panel today. And the topic, of course, is reigniting the luxury hospitality industry. There's lots of mythology out there. There's lots of guesswork. Today, we're going to do a reality check with some frontline veterans who really know the story. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Kathleen Shea, who's got a terrific career journey in the industry. And then I'll introduce our panelists. So Kathleen, why don't you please share a little bit about your career journey with us, and welcome.
Thank you, Katie and Milton, and I'm delighted to be speaking with you today. As co-moderator, I'll be drawing upon my experience as a luxury hospitality specialist, leading sales and marketing growth for brands like Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental, and Taj, to hear from our elite panel of experts about the future of luxury travel. And even though we're emerging from very challenging times, I know from my personal experience of building high-performing teams, opening multiple hotels, relaunches, rebrands, and recoveries, that this is actually a great time of opportunity for our luxury hospitality industry.
Thank you, Kathleen. And before I hand it over back to you, I'd love for Shannon and Jack and Ben to please introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves in that order, please.
Hello, everyone. Milton, Kathleen, thank you for having me on this panel with Jack and Ben. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm the president and CEO of Leading Hotels of the World. I started my career at a small company called American Express, where I spent 15 years. About half of that time was in the travel division. In 2013, I came over to Leading as the chief marketing officer, and I was elevated to president and CEO in October of 2019. So I have impeccable timing.
Thank you. And Jack?
Thank you. Jack Ezon, I'm president and managing partner, founder of Embark Beyond, a luxury travel company based here in New York. I actually started off as a lawyer about 25 years ago and always had a dream of being in travel. I launched a travel website back in 1999, and one thing led to another, and I got lucky enough starting in the year 2000 in the luxury travel space, and here I am.
Thank you, Jack. And now Ben?
Hi, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Katie, Milton, Kathleen. Really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today. My hospitality career began working in bars and restaurants in London as I worked my way through college. Started with Four Seasons in 1995. Kathleen can vouch for that. I've certainly been through a big journey myself. I hope none of those stories are going to come out during the rest of this panel. But I've worked in sales and marketing for the company, in operations. 5 different hotels I've managed to open, many different continents, including the Middle East, Europe, and of course here in North America, and spent 7 years running the Beverly Wilshire in Beverly Hills, which was a great, great honor. Had a region of hotels there that I looked after, and then the last 3 years, I've been responsible for sales and hotel marketing globally for Four Seasons. So very proud of that journey. It's our 60th anniversary this year, so it's a big year for Four Seasons, but really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Ben. Kathleen, over to you to start the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. We're so looking forward to hearing from our stellar panel of experts about the unique opportunities in the post-pandemic travel world. But first, we would be remiss in not acknowledging the tremendous impact of the pandemic on our beloved industry. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask each of our panelists in just a few words, describe 2020. Shannon, let's begin with you.
Oh, just a few words. It was a year that was abundant in its challenges. I think we all can agree with that. Abundant in its heartbreak, abundant in its frustrations, but it was also abundant in its humanity, in its life lessons, and quite frankly, in its unexpected blessings as well.
Very good. Jack, what's your point of view?
2020 to me has been Darwinistic. Meaningful, challenging, full of grit, but Darwinistic is the word that comes to mind for me when it comes to 2020, the Great Reset.
Very interesting. And Ben, how about you?
Certainly echo all of those things. Scary, I think, intimidating for sure. One that's challenged every aspect, certainly of my professional aptitude in areas that I don't think I would have ever have expected to be challenged. But I think it's also put in perspective and realigned perspective when you consider it alongside the human tragedy that we've witnessed. And for me, that's the lasting lesson that comes out of 2020 is just how humbling our industry can be, but when put in perspective with what else is happening in the globe, also, a really big reset for us as well.
Well, thank you. That certainly puts everything into perspective. So now let's put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror and time travel to the fall of 2021. And I'd like to ask each of you, what are the new trends emerging that you're experiencing from your best guests and clients firsthand? Tell us a little bit about the pace of recovery and what signals are you experiencing from the market that are guiding your strategy? Share with us a story or an example or two. Shannon?
Multi-part question. I can't wait to get into the time machine and be in the fall of this year. I'm really looking forward to that. I think one of the things that we've seen even as recently as today is this concept of luxury is local, right? I think we all know this. We've known this for years. Local, authentic, and experiential travel has been an international luxury travel trend for many years. But this kind of 2.0 version is not about inbound international travelers. It's more about local travelers awakening to and exploring the beauty and wonders of their own cities and countries. And I do think that that's a trend that we will see continue. Certainly, I think as soon as anybody can get on a long haul flight and go explore, they will. But I do think this luxury is local 2.0 trend will continue through recovery. I think this unabated demand among luxury travelers for authentic and personally enriching experiences is something that the crisis didn't dampen. And in fact, in some ways, it's fueled it. So I continue to see this unabated growth of consumer demand for ever more authentic and tailored experiences. In fact, my old friends at Amex did a great study that showed that luxury travelers, they want to support small businesses and communities that make a destination unique. 72% of the respondents agreed that they're passionate about traveling to a destination to help boost tourism revenue in the local economy. So people want to leave the destination better than they find it. They want to feel as though they are being enriched, but also enriching a destination. So I do think that that's another trend that we'll continue to see, carry forth into the future for sure. And in terms of what I'm following from a demand perspective, I mean, people are already traveling, right? I mean, we know this, and we were just talking about it before. It's not at the mix or the volume that any of us would like to see, but people are traveling. And I think this will certainly continue as the vaccine programs roll out and as travel restrictions are lifted. I think I'm anticipating a very large, burst of the bubble or pent-up demand release or whatever you want to call it to happen as soon as the travel restrictions, particularly for my business, the US to Europe. So once the US to Europe travel restrictions, once those are lifted, I anticipate a big bump. People, Leaders Club members and all of our guests are clamoring to get back to what they know and love about Europe, especially summer travel. So, what we see with affluent travelers is almost 80% of them are optimistic about traveling safely now, right? So, and they're ready to go. They are already planning. Over half of them are already planning and booking travel. So, from my perspective, that is the pent-up demand and the opportunity ahead for us to sustain and help this business rebound is strong, and I'm looking forward to it, as I'm sure we all are.
Well, thank you for that comprehensive overview. So Jack, how about from the agency perspective? What's your take in terms of the trends?
Look, I think I was totally wrong about this whole how long COVID would last. So I don't know about my crystal ball, but I'm feeling like 5 overarching trends that we're starting to see. Number one is travel is coming back with a vengeance in the leisure space. People are seeking meaningful experiences. It's really important, meaningful experiences. So much so that I think we're going to have an issue with getting space in 2022. We're seeing 3 years of compression from 2020, 2021, and 2022, all falling in 22. Number two, I think wellness and reuniting with people, whether that's family, friends, whatever it may be, are going to be the top driver in 2021 and to 2022. Number three, as I see this continuous emergence of this concept that we've spoken about many times, the global nomad, I think that's going to continue into the long term, taking long-term stays actually to another level, but really a new way of doing business and a new way of living and exploring the world month, 2 months, or quarters at a time. And we need to think about how we're going to work with that market and engage with that market. I also think that'll spill over into families, into what we call like a global classroom, where kids will kind of like maybe learn remote throughout the world, using the world as their classroom and embracing that while they're learning with teachers, whether they're in person with them, flying around the world with them, or virtually. Number four, I think we're going to be doing something like micro networking with macro messaging. Micro networking with macro messaging. I think Marriott already piloted this, where you have instead of having 10,000 people getting together in a conference, you may have 100 or 500 people in multiple locations hearing one message, but networking on a much smaller level. And then last, I don't know about this, but I think we're going to see urban hotels become more like landing pads for a long haul commuter. And what I mean by that is we've seen a lot of people move further away from their cities into more residential, more suburban, or even rural areas. And eventually, I think there's going to be a need for that comeback for collaboration, teams, meeting in person. And my vision is maybe city hotels will be places where instead of business travelers coming in to do business with other companies, actually company employees coming into the office for 1, 2, or 3 nights every week or so, and using a hotel as their landing pad to have that office time.
Great. Well, some real nuggets there. So thank you, Jack, for that helpful overview.
We'll see if I'm right. I don't know.
Time will tell. And Ben, and congratulations on your 60th anniversary, by the way. Tell us what you're seeing out in the marketplace.
Just for the record, I haven't been there for 60 years. It's the company. Yeah, I think, I echo certainly a lot of what both Shannon and Jack have said. I think we've seen a lot of those trends that are very, very important for the industry sort of in the recovery that are also going to continue as we go forward from here. If you're talking about moving forward to the fall of this year, the key for that is certainly going to be Europe, as far as I see the industry changing. If you think about as well the health of the travel industry generally, certainly the travel agent community, the long haul flights are very, very important, and how Europe comes back as all these regulations that change so frequently right now open up countries and cause quick lockdowns will just be really important. So we've seen a lot of the same things that other brands have seen. Remote locations are obviously very important. Increased length of stay has become very important to us as well. The merging of the business traveler and leisure traveler into sort of a hybrid gathering, if you like, where people sort of come and go. We're certainly seeing a huge amount of appetite right now for the villa and what we call our private retreat product, where people can gather in groups, not just in the family environment, but particularly popular when you have small groups of friends who perhaps haven't been able to connect. The vaccine's obviously rolling out for certain groups of people. Countries are using that as a delineator, and people moving to gather and really connect in that environment, perhaps to some of the people they haven't been able to connect with over the last year, unlike families where in some cases, a lot of families have been able to. So we're seeing that happening. Lead times are coming down generally, with a couple of exceptions right now. The last 6 weeks has seen a huge change of pace of bookings in the industry. I know many of our wonderful travel partners like Jack have just seen a complete transformation in the last 6 weeks, such that now first quarter pace of booking is ahead of where it was in 2020. which if you think about it, was still actually an active year until the last couple of weeks of that quarter. But in many cases, a lot of our travel partners, they're ahead of 2019. So if we talk about the pent-up demand for travel, I think that's going to be huge. And festive pace, for example, is really at levels that we haven't seen for a long, long time. So, I think the demand is there. That's definitely going to come back to us. And in the meeting space, that's the great opportunity. It's still being defined very much. The hub and spoke meeting that Jack has described has certainly been something that's been a big part of our meeting space recovery. And even on a smaller scale, where instead of getting 200 people together in a ballroom, you have 20 people in 10 different locations scattered across the globe. And then we as a brand have an opportunity to bring everybody together by having synergies between how we operate and execute the meeting. So, there's some great exciting changes like that as we sort of reposition how we build companies back together and really sort of communicate again. But the pace in the last 6 weeks to 2 months has really just given us great optimism and great faith that we're recovering very, very nicely right now.
Thank you, Ben. That is certainly a very encouraging outlook. So you've all talked about the importance of the leisure travel market. So to give us a sense of how is leisure travel evolving since 2019, 2020, what are you experiencing in terms of the needs and desires around travel for your best guests and clients? And tell us about the location preferences that the travelers are booking for this year and 2022 and beyond. Shannon?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yes, I think a lot of these, Jack and Ben both touched on a bit, but I think it's safe to say, as both of my colleagues here have said, it, as in previous periods of disruption, leisure travel is once again kind of leading the business recovery, right? It's certainly the case for leading. We already have a very strong leisure base, but as of right now, it's most of the bookings, almost greater than 90% of our bookings are for leisure at this point. We're also seeing a tremendous, as Ben mentioned, kind of longer length of stay, higher ADR because people are opting for more villas, more presidential suites, more space, right? This idea of privacy and space and not being around other people is a very big thing that we're seeing. And certainly having a tremendous impact. Our ADR is up 32% as a result. I think the other major, and I kind of touched on this before with the 2.0, which is that almost double our mix now is, domestic versus international. We used to be, the mix was the opposite. And so you're seeing a lot more domestic and regional travel than at least my business had ever really seen before. And the booking windows are very, very short. I mean, we have people booking and traveling outside of their region. 66% of people are booking within a week and traveling to outside their region. So they're being really opportunistic, very spontaneous. And I think, not surprisingly from a destination perspective, they're seeking more remote, less crowded, more fresh air, mountains and countrysides and vineyards and beaches. The cities have not yet bounced back, which I think we can all understand and appreciate. They're going to be very important in the future without a doubt. But right now, I think people are highly valuing, their space and their privacy to the extent that it's possible. One of our hotels in the Maldives is up almost 500% year over year. I mean, it's just that level in terms of, what people are looking for. So, I think from an emotional and physical needs perspective, not surprising, is safety is table stakes. It's expected. And the second is flexibility. They really want us to be as flexible as possible to kind of stay with them on their last minute bookings, but also help remove some of the friction in the process, which we all know because we've done it. There's a tremendous amount of friction in the process right now for travelers, and they're looking to us to help alleviate that to the extent it's possible.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Good news on that ADR growth. So Jack, how about from the agency perspective? What are you seeing in the leisure space?
I think Shannon's spot on. We've actually seen our ADR jump about 38%, so similar to where you are at leading. And we've also seen our length of stay grow by about, I think, almost 100% on average. Our domestic used to be about 8% of our business. Now it's about 85 to 90, depending on how we consider domestic, right? If we're going to be looking at Mexico and Caribbean, we used to call that. Now it's about 50%, which is interesting. What I think the drivers are right now, it's connections. I think Ben alluded to that also, and again, meaningful experiences. But with the vaccines becoming more and more prevalent and fatigue, we're not seeing people being as sensitive to needing that private space as much coming up. They want that private space, not because they're afraid, but because they want to be together with people. And as far as where we're going, I have no idea. I mean, I think a lot of it has to depend on what's going to open. People are anxious. People are booking 2-3 trips at a time, but I have no idea what's going to actually materialize. I mean, our whole success this past year has been almost living in the moment and listening to our clients, being very customer centric and looking for solutions to whatever we hear. We've been doing half editorial calendars. So where normally we'd plan out a year or 6 months in advance of what our messaging is going to be, every month we only have half of that calendar filled because we want to fill the other half with spontaneous ideas, promotions, concepts of what we're hearing in the moment at the moment, because things are changing so quickly.
Well, that's really a good nuanced understanding of what's happening. So thank you. So Ben, tell us what's happening at Four Seasons.
I mean, certainly a vast majority of those points. And I think we're very fortunate that we've also seen some
Leah, could you tell Paul to speak quietly?
I'm sorry, I can hear another voice, but it's very fortunate that we've heard some great upswings. Thank you. Was I not doing very well, Jack? You needed to say something else? I got it. It's all good. So we've seen those great things, and frankly, as we look to the recovery, they've given us some great indicators and insights that have enabled us to create strategy going forward, as we have seen certain destinations coming back, joining us, at certain pace. So, the insight and analytics piece is obviously huge for us. And I think when you talk about, how do you translate those insight and analytics into emotional and physical needs, we're all starting at a position of trust, right? When you have this level of uncertainty in the world, we're very fortunate we went into the pandemic with the highest levels of brand trust in the industry. And I didn't think we realized quite how important that would be as we did navigate this. But we very quickly, as Shannon said, realized that, an immaculately clean hotel adhering to perfect health and safety standards becomes table stakes in the luxury hospitality world, as it should and as it always has. And what we then found that people were migrating towards was more around the personal connections. They still wanted to feel that they could talk to our staff. They still wanted to understand our staff's story. They wanted to know how our teams, many of whom they'd known for many, many years, were navigating their way through this. And they had genuine concerns for, how are their families and how are they supporting communities? So we certainly found that to be a really, really important driver of guest satisfaction for us. So we'll certainly look to take that into the future. The whole idea of the hospitality world looks a little bit different, but feels identical is really, really important to us, because I think, as Jack said there, we certainly have found guests moving away from this desire to be in their own micro bubble. And on their own terms and at their own pace, they want to feel how other guests, are looking and reacting and behaving in a certain environment, and getting back to the vibe that they had that created excitement. And that's what everybody wanted, right? Everybody always wants the last table in a restaurant, right? Nobody wants to sit and dine in an empty restaurant. And our guests are certainly feeling that, but within our Lead with Care program that makes them feel like they're really, really secure. As far as destinations are concerned, you mentioned the Maldives, Shannon. That's just been an absolute standout across the world, the way that's performed, certainly for us and many, many other brands. Florida has been really, really strong for us right throughout this process, continues to be. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and then the hotel environment they're managing within the regulations and with Lead with Care feels really, really good. So that's obviously performed well. Mexico, Costa Rica, and of course, when Hawaii opened up, that fueled just a huge, huge part for us. We've got some great properties there that we're very fortunate and seeing pace in those destinations that are very important. For me, though, the key is going to come to as the rest of the world opens up, as Europe opens up. Is it going to consistently open up and build that trust that people can book things and commit and secure? Or is it going to sort of open up in fits and starts, which we know has created this level of sort of apathy towards the booking process, and will probably send us back into that very short lead term booking pattern. So some of the things that we're seeing ahead of us.
Well, thank you for that detailed and global perspective, Ben. So much has been speculated about the future of business travel. So we'd like to hear from each of you, how is business travel shaping up, both from an individual travel point of view, and what about meetings? So tell us what's happening for 2021 and beyond. Shannon?
So I personally believe that business travel will rebound. It may not be at the levels that it was in 2019 for some time, but I do believe that business travel will rebound, because I do think that there is a need, and Jack alluded to this, there is a need for people to get together in person, to brainstorm, to network, to build relationships, to just connect on a human level. That's not just about travelers, right? That's about employees. We feel that. I miss my colleagues, so I think I do anticipate that their business travel will return. I do think that some of the trips I used to take, for example, I may not take in the future, and I'll leverage technology instead. But business travel is not going away by any stretch. And I fully anticipate, we'll start to see by the end of this year some more momentum on that. And I think 2022 we'll start to realize much more on the business travel side. For me, on the group side, I feel, or on the meeting side, I feel very similarly. I mean, I think technology has actually offered up to us a unique opportunity to extend the reach of our meetings. It's something we've learned this year. We relied so heavily on in-person meetings, and they're amazing and we love them. But there are limitations on capacity. There are limitations on expenses and operational considerations. You can't take everybody out of a hotel and have a meeting, because who's going to run the hotel, right? So there are limitations to how many people are able to join, for example, our events, our annual convention, which is our biggest event of the year. We might have 200, 250 hoteliers join in person, which is fantastic. And it's an unmatched event in terms of the in-person experience. But this year, because of COVID, we obviously were forced to do it virtually. And we were able to engage almost 5 times as many hoteliers using technology, because they didn't have to travel, and there was no cost, and there were no capacity limitations. So that level of engagement is very important, for us and I think in hospitality in general, and certainly for leading, to be able to reach that many people. So from my perspective, technology will continue to be a part of the meetings business from my perspective, because you can extend the reach of who you're speaking to, who you're communicating with, how that networking is going. This kind of hub and spoke solution is a great one as well, also empowered by technology. And from a groups and kind of MICE perspective, I think the rumors of the demise of MICE and groups is greatly exaggerated. We're already seeing a tremendous amount of interest, entertainment, fashion, car, automotive. I mean, the leads are coming in fast and furiously, and not just for 2022, but for second half of this year. So personally, I believe the rumors of the demise of those segments is grossly exaggerated.
Good. Well, that's very, very good news to hear on both the business travel and the meetings point of view. So Jack, tell us from the agency perspective, what's your crystal ball looking like?
I agree with Shannon, and I'm sure Ben will be on the same page too. We see this business coming back. First of all, collaboration in person, that can't be replaced. Networking in person can't be replaced. I mean, even look what I did. I thought I was on mute, but I wasn't. Telling someone to be quiet in my office. So, these things are never going to replace what can happen in real life. And like I think Shannon alluded to, there's going to be a middle ground. Messaging, I think, keynotes, a lot of that can happen virtually, but that human contact, those relationships that I know I've built and many other companies built all over, nothing's the same as face-to-face, as having a conversation that's not timed over a lunch or whatever that may be. I also agree, business, everything is cyclical. Nothing's been the end of anything really, right? When it comes to human contact and connection. So what I think is going to happen are those smaller, little, nimble companies are going to hustle and get on the road first. And those bigger, more corpulent companies that have more stringent policies of liability are going to follow when they need to follow, get that business from those smaller companies. I think that's going to happen, and we'll find out somewhere in between. As far as meetings, the social space is growing, I think, and the incentive space, I don't think is going to go away. I know incentives are going to continue. In fact, a lot of them have several years planned on the books. And that social calendar, people want to celebrate together now more than ever. And I think whatever gap you lost with meetings, so corporate meetings, you're going to gain in social events.
Great. It's good to hear you're bullish on the in-person and the importance of the social interactions for meetings. So Ben, let's hear what's happening at Four Seasons.
certainly echo all of those thoughts around business travel. And I love to hear the optimism around meetings and events as well. It's certainly a huge part of our business and the luxury hospitality business generally, as well as communities and towns. So it's an important sphere for us to look at in a holistic sense. We see business travel coming back for sure. It will be different, there's no question. But when we look at how other regions of the world have recovered during this process, we've seen that there is a need for people to connect from a business sense. I even look back to couple of weeks ago that I got to meet with Jack in person and have breakfast with him. It's just so much more fulfilling an environment to be. You can communicate so much better. And I don't see that going away. 25 years ago, we were told that video conferencing was going to kill the meetings business. And it certainly didn't do that, right, in any sense. So I think meetings will look very different. But just on the business travel side of it, what we're finding is companies that previously had a lot of concerns around rates and what corporate rates, negotiated corporate rates, and who stays in which program and who doesn't. A lot of those things have become far, far less important than the analysis of the health and safety programs that brands have in place. People are willing to make sure their employees are in safe environments. So I think in the luxury world, that's great for all of us because it tends to mean that corporate hotel programs will move to places they can guarantee the health and safety of their employees, which typically is a luxury hotel environment. So we're obviously very pleased with that. We're certainly seeing the meeting space coming back really quite quickly. We've operated more than 100 hybrid programs already this year within our brand, and they take on every shape and form you can imagine, but all really leading with technology. And I think this will be where the true sort of rubber meets the road, if you like. As we all know, we've all been on the calls where the call has dropped or where the sound quality is not so good. Or the lighting is not so great. And you'll see many of our hotels now, and we launched this program in a couple of weeks, but many of our hotels have entire recording studios set up where people can present with great confidence to a wide audience. And I think that technology piece and the true quality of both the audio visual side of things, but also the backbone technology of the hotel itself or the venue itself will just become sort of upgraded and moving to another level. But very confident about both of those two segments and very confident in the power of human connection. It just cannot be underestimated, for me at least. I can't wait to get back to meeting with all my different teams around the world in person.
That's wonderful. And it's very encouraging to hear about the 100 hybrid meetings that are booked to Four Seasons. So great recap. So now for my final question, I'd like to ask each of our panelists on the important topic of leadership. Tell us, how are you leading your teams differently in terms of staffing, recruiting, training, mentoring, maintaining and attracting your top talent that really ensures your ability to deliver the best-in-class service? So Shannon, what's your perspective here?
Yeah, this is when I was speaking about what 2020 meant to me in a few words. One of the unexpected blessings of what I think we can all agree was a devastating year was what I observed or what happened with my team and the ways in which we work together completely differently. So what I really want to do is build on the lessons of 2020, build on the experience of 2020, and incorporate that or integrate that into our culture. Agility. We did things that if you had asked members of my team a year ago, could you get something to market, speed to market? Could you get something to market in 6 weeks? A technology build, they would have looked at me like I was crazy, but we did it, right? So agility, speed to market, the customer focus. Jack referenced this. Really listening to the problems that need to be solved and creating solutions to meet those needs, not doing what we think is the right thing to do, really being attuned to what those customer needs are. Prioritization, collaboration, cultivating a growth mindset where risk-taking is rewarded, right? I think that's innovation comes from risk, but risk isn't always properly recognized or rewarded in a kind of corporate environment. So really bringing that forward. I believe we are actually a stronger organization now than we were before the pandemic in many ways. I think coming out of this experience, we understand that great work doesn't have to be limited to 9 to 5 from an office setting. I think we will bring more flexibility to our culture, allowing different work styles, locations, hours, because I think what we've all proven this year is that great work can get done any hour of the day in any location around the world. And, just continuing to be more connected and collaborative with our business partners, with our member hotels. I think those are things, nurturing the community that is leading hotels, because we are different, right? We're not, we don't control every aspect of the experience of our independent luxury hotels. So the amount of collaboration that's required for us to be successful, and really our version of success is, are our members successful? That comes from collaboration, from listening, from understanding the challenges and crafting solutions that help empower the success of those independent luxury hotels. So, for me, it really comes down to customer centricity, listening, agility, flexibility, and risk and reward.
Great. Well, those are some powerful lessons learned. So thank you for sharing that. Jack, from the agency owner point of view, tell us about your experience.
Look, it's been an emotional roller coaster for everyone, including myself. But this year, we've really changed the way we work with a lot of our team, much more entrepreneurial. Similar, I think, to what Shannon was alluding to. Yeah, everybody's compensation is a lot more aligned with their success. Our whole approach has been teamwork, entrepreneurship, and yet maternal caring. And that's important. I think all of us leaders took a lot more of a interest and a focus on people's personal lives, not just giving people business goals, but personal goals, especially during the heart of lockdown, so that everybody had something that they were working on, both personally and professionally. We took our lineup, which I know Four Seasons does religiously, and we had daily lineup. We still do every single day virtually, which is a 20 to 25 minute touch base with everyone in the company. And it's been priceless to have that connection, because we were all adjusting to this new life, like Shannon again was alluding, of working from home, not being around people, not having that time to collaborate. So whether it's that lineup, WhatsApp message groups, and really trying to create other kinds of engagement, whether it was cooking classes together, cocktail hours, even educationals, to have more touch points with our people as far away as we were from each other.
That's great. Great to hear about the daily lineup. So Ben, let's hear from your point of view at Four Seasons. What are some of the key takeaways as a leader?
I think we're very fortunate that we have such a strong employee culture right the way through every part of our business, that we were able to sort of revert and really focus on that, as we always had. Undoubtedly, when you realign the size of a company, as many of us did during this process, there's a lot of scars left from that. And I think the first thing that we really focused on was making sure that we didn't ignore the change that had come. And we really allowed people to talk about that. We really asked questions, we listened, and we acted on it, and we checked back and really communicate very, very strongly around that change. And not just to believe that you sort of draw a line and move on from that point, because even people who haven't directly been affected, they may now have, a couple of jobs where in the past maybe they only had one job, and they're learning new skills every day, or they're getting people joining their teams who are perhaps, new to a particular role or adapting to a different role. So, I think we were just stayed really, really close to our employees throughout this process. Very quickly, though, the world is pivoting, right? So we're seeing this huge demand, and we know at that point, our employees are going to come under huge demand from our competitors. They're going to want to, consider what other offers have been out there, what's happened to their compensation during this time. So I think the other piece that's very important is not to become complacent about the employee proposition that you have right now, and really to think about, we're providing great careers. The hospitality industry became very volatile, and people are looking for stability. And are we able as a group to really describe the hospitality industry as having great, secure career prospects for people both coming into the industry and people who continue to develop through the industry, as a demand for our employees from outside the industry becomes stronger than it ever has. So, I think those pieces are very important. Training is still very important. We want our employees to feel really confident and to really know that they're delivering a fantastic product to our guests. And we really want them to feel engaged with every aspect, particularly when it comes to something like Lead with Care that, I think is a little bit different than the world that they've operated in before, and can really answer those questions very directly. So really focusing on the employee, really listening very, very carefully. And for me now, it's all about us as an industry looking forward to see how we're going to attract more great talent into the industry. You know, what can we all do in the entrepreneurial environment for that employee that wants that, and to transform the industry there. And I think finally is to be very, very aware of macro global trends, global things that are influencing the world, be they in the way that people work. Easy to say to somebody, you know, you can work from home now, we don't need an office in that city. And the employee looks at you and thinks, that's easy for you to say from your house with your office and the peace and quiet and the doors that shut. But I share my apartment in Beijing with my partner, my baby, our nanny, and the dog, and it's 600 square feet. So does it work really globally? I think that's also a really important thing that we consider each employee's individual circumstances and develop a proposition going forward that works for them as an individual, not just as a cookie cutter. So those are some of the things that we're seeing.
That's great feedback, Ben. And clearly, Four Seasons continues to be very employee-centric and adapting to the times. So this concludes part one of our conversation. And I want to thank our panelists for their brilliant insights and contribution. And now I'd like to turn the conversation over to the visionary CEO of the Luxury Institute, Milton Pedraza. Milton?
Thank you. And I will say, to respond to that, that the only reason we got these great speakers is because they're friends of Kathleen Shea. So that, I think, says it all. But Shannon, I know you wanted to share an insight, so please go ahead.
Thanks, Milton. I interrupted Ben, I didn't mean to, but I wanted to just give a real life example of something that he was speaking about regarding the challenge of attracting external talent into the hospitality industry. We extended an offer to somebody for our IT team last week, and we really had to have a very robust conversation about why would I come into travel right now? And so I think that this is a big, I think if we're recruiting within the travel industry, I think it's okay. But I think, certainly we're constantly looking to kind of bring in new talent and different perspectives and different experience. And it's a conversation that is very prevalent right now. So I think, Ben, your insight and also recommendation that we all kind of work together to figure out what is the way to answer that question, and how do we make sure that we are compelling or telling a compelling story about just how extraordinary it is to work in hospitality. And so it resonated with me because we literally just had this conversation last week.
I think that's a great point, because I do think the luxury travel industry has a great future of growth, and to look at the short term, I think, is short-sighted on the part of both, let's say, aspiring professionals as well as the people who need to attract them. So I think it's a great point. I am going to switch for a second into digital transformation, and I'm going to ask you just one question, because I know we have a lot of questions from the audience and I want to be respectful of that. When you guys think of digital transformation, what comes to your mind in terms of what your brand is doing? And I want you to please address the back of the house as well as the guest experience. And I'm going to ask Ben to go first, please.
Yeah, it's funny, digital transformation makes me think back to the idea of when we used to make decisions based on gut instinct, and we just don't anymore. And the biggest digital transformation that I've seen is just the absolute investment, both literally and mentally, in the whole area of insight and analytics. And when we deploy any spend, when we put any campaign together, when we take any kind of position as a brand now, the value of the insight and analytics world, it just rises to the absolute top. And how we develop that, obviously, is having our own bespoke state-of-the-art CRM system that enables us to really understand who our guests are and what our guests are. We're very fortunate. About 5 years ago, we created both the Four Seasons app, but also chat. So we have live chat in all of our hotels, which has already executed more than 10 million transactions with an average response time of less than 2 minutes. And it really has been, in this current environment we're in, an absolute godsend to us, because it was already in place. Everybody else is trying to sort of catch up with that, but it's live. So each of our properties are investing more and more in the number of transactions that need to come from that. And the transformational part of it, I think, speaks to the idea of what does luxury really mean? And luxury really, when it comes to service execution, is being able to dictate how you want service to be executed for you as an individual, what really works for you. And although obviously at the beginning, those of us who've been with the company for a long time sort of saw chat and thought, oh gosh, is it really going to be a luxurious experience? And obviously we don't have any bot responses to it, which really helps with that. But what we found is our guests want to behave how they want to behave. And if they want to have a beautiful cappuccino waiting for them in a to-go cup at the host stand as they get in their car, as they walk downstairs, they want to be able to send that in a chat message. Not everyone, but some do. And in the same way as when I was in hotels and I had some guests who wanted their guest room key to be ready for them when they arrived to the front door of the hotel, I had other guests who came to me and said, don't do that to me. I want to go say hello to Helena at the front desk. I've known her for 20 years and I need to know how her daughter is. So let me go get my key from Helena. So I think there's a little bit of it that's it just enables a huge amount of personalization. And then obviously we get into the whole idea of how do you engage, how do you nurture, how do you create direct campaigns for people, and how do you make them really personalized. But to me, it starts with the insight and analytics, but really moves to the personalization of the guest journey.
Thank you, Ben. And Shannon, what about you?
Yes, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I'm completely aligned with what Ben shared. I mean, from my perspective, digital transformation is vital to the future of leading hotels of the world. In fact, when I came in as CMO, I spearheaded the re-platforming of our data and technology infrastructure to create the one-on-one, one-to-one personalization capabilities that we're using now. To Ben's point, it's critical. A company like Leading or Four Seasons, our advantage, of course, is our hotels. But my value proposition to the hotels is information, is insights, analytics, and insights about the guest and how we collect, analyze, operationalize, and share that information with our members is what really is going to drive a differentiation. For my customer, that is the hotel, but also enable them to deliver an extraordinary experience, a personalized experience for their guest, which in turn creates loyalty, which in turn keeps that guest coming back to them, right? So for me, digital transformation is a vital pillar of the strategy to differentiate leading hotels of the world, and it's something we have continued to invest in and will continue to invest in forever, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Shannon. And Jack, are you a member of one of the networks, Virtuoso, I think?
Virtuoso.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your company and also being within the Virtuoso network. How does digital transformation work for you?
So look, we're putting all our money in a very similar place where I think Shannon and Ben's company are. We're putting our money in the future of artificial intelligence. We believe in augmented artificial intelligence, fusing AI with intuitive intelligence and helping our advisors sell better, know our clients better. And most important is to be able to deliver emotional impact by understanding what that customer likes, prefers, needs, and what drives them, what their passions are, so that we can create unique moments for them that they wouldn't expect. Because we believe that loyalty comes from the heart and not the pocket. And by understanding our customers and deep diving more, we can deliver more emotional impact. And so that's what we're betting on. We're looking to upgrade our CRM with a really state-of-the-art AI platform, which I know is about 2 or 3 years down the line, but that's where we're going in our digital transformation.
Thank you.
You want to know about Virtuoso?
Yes.
I mean,
well, how do they provide some insight and benefits for you?
Virtuoso is an incredible consortia. It has the best and the top luxury travel companies and hoteliers and other travel suppliers that work together to best market and brand, I think, luxury hospitality to a high-end, ultra high net worth consumer.
Thank you, Jack. So Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you because I see there's several questions and I know that we want to answer as many as we can in the remaining 12 minutes. So please, Katie, take over.
Absolutely. So thank you all panelists. Really appreciate it. We have a tremendous amount of questions that have come in, which is phenomenal. Thank you, attendees. One of the key questions that has been asked by several, so I'd like to address it first, is a twofold question. On one hand, there are many people who are wanting to get back to work within the travel industry. So they're wanting to come back to work because perhaps they were let go. Then at the same time, we're also seeing, from another colleague who mentioned, we're also seeing people who are leaving travel and going elsewhere. So let's focus on the first part first. What are the skills that are required to come back to work, to really come back to the travel industry and the hospitality industry and survive and, let's say, thrive in the coming year?
Ben, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think when you look at the employee proposition, if you like, it's very much a two-way street. This isn't about the industry, deciding that you need to be a different type of employee. We've got to be a fantastic employer for you. We've got to compete for you, and we've got to offer you a fantastic proposition, as I said right from the beginning. So, anybody looking to come back into the industry, know that certainly that's our perspective as a company, that nobody needs to sort of be grateful for having a job either now or changing the employee proposition going forward. I think when it comes to the skill changes that have been in place, they're not enormous, in all honesty. There's obviously a different level of knowledge acquisition, just in terms of what's happened in the lead with care environment. There's certainly some realignment of some of the skill sets from a sort of centralized marketing perspective, in that certain companies have sort of reorganized and brought certain functions centrally versus them being perhaps regionally before. But for me, the most important thing is the same thing as that we always have: the ability to make a fantastic connection with guests and with your colleagues, and to be inspiring, to be somebody who is willing to take risks, but to know that you're supported in doing that is really, really important for us. I think in the pure sales and marketing world, there's undoubtedly been quite a few changes. When you think of the very simple things around segmentation, for example, where perhaps you would have been a very focused group sales manager at one point, or really focused on the group segment. It may be that that's now becoming a hybrid role. It may be that the customers you were very used to working with and had great strength and depth of relationship for many years, not all of them are currently in a position to provide business for you. So I would say the biggest change in that environment is the skill, need, and desire to drive new business. And driving new business, which has always in theory been a great part of the luxury hospitality business, has always been done in a relatively gentle way. But now I think, as we look at the reorganization, knowing who your customers are 2 years ago could be one of your greatest weaknesses. But also knowing that they maybe not quite your greatest customer right now, but the ones that have the power to transform you going forward is also important. So to me, that new business mindset and driving new business is probably the biggest transformation we'd be looking for.
Terrific. Shannon, anything to share on that? Or
No, I agree with Ben. I think there were two things that came to mind for me. One is it's not a wholesale change by any stretch, and I think it is a two-way street. I would say there's two things that are important, and Ben kind of he said these, so it's a little bit redundant. But the first is a relentless desire to learn, continuous learning, continuous adapting to the environment, and you do that through learning. And I think the second thing is, and you referred to it, Ben, as kind of segmentation. I think about it a little bit like specialization. This age of specialization of a specific segment in a specific region in a specific period of time, for me, is expanding a little bit. I think especially on the marketing front, you have a couple of capabilities that you probably need technical specialists in, but for me, I'm seeing more success with some generalist, marketing generalists, sales generalists, so that you can pitch hit at times. You can seek new business. You can be a little bit more free to kind of work outside your box. And I think that to me is it's the growth mindset that I referenced earlier. I think that's what's going to help propel us collectively as an industry into the future, is that desire to learn and that desire to think outside your predetermined box and really grow and develop.
And if I could just jump in, I think what you're saying is so spot on, Diana and Shannon. We need people to come in thinking like entrepreneurs. You may think that you have a job or you have a title. Everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Everybody needs to think differently, be nimble, be open. We all had 100 pivots this year, but I don't think that's going to change. I think the environment going forward is, where can I get something that everybody else doesn't have? What can I build that isn't there already?
Brilliant. Thank you. Katie, what's the next one?
Excellent. Thank you all. So Jack, I'd like to direct this question specifically to you to start. How do you think the vaccine passports will be introduced for luxury travel? And how do you think the global industry will be ready for it, and when?
I have no idea. I wish somebody would come up with one platform and agree. Is it beta or VHS or CD or Blu-ray? We got to figure something out. I have no idea. Does anybody?
But Jack, you do think that people will need passports. Is that true or no?
You know what? I don't know that it's going to be that much different than if I needed a yellow fever vaccine to get into a country and I had to show proof of it. I don't know. I mean, I have my vaccine card. It's a flimsy little piece of paper I could probably make up in, any copy shop tomorrow. But I have no idea.
I feel that way
Anybody
too, but
else
I want to
know?
ask, I feel that way too, Jack. I have this little card from the Senior Citizen Center of some little town, and
Senior
I don't know how valid that is. But Ben and then Shannon, how do you feel about that? Because it's a big issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an industry, we'd certainly love to see some clarity. I know there's certain countries, one country this week announced that you need to have a vaccine in order to be allowed to go in, but yet said that without actually clarifying what that proof would mean. Do you have to have it endorsed by somebody? Do you show it on booking? Do you show it on arrival? There's just a lot of uncertainty around. I'm similar to Jack in that I believe this isn't new ground, and you have had to prove that you're have certain things in order to enter certain countries at different times. And I think that'll probably be the way it sort of unfolds. And then there'll be a lot of questions, I think, coming from that about the employee base of the countries that you're going to. And are you going to an environment where all of your employees have to be seen and designated to have had a vaccine, and just various things like that. But right now, I think we're still at the stage that different countries are showing different levels of ability to actually, to get the vaccine out to their own people before we start talking about demanding things from people coming in. But I'd love some clarity, and I'm sure Shannon's going to give us perfect clarity right now.
The only clarity the only thing I would add is that I'm pretty confident there won't be a global solution.
Okay, terrific.
So
My biggest concern with the whole vaccine, requirement is what about families, the whole family travel? Because right now, I don't know how long this will last. Children under 18 aren't supposed to be vaccinated. We don't know how that looks, what that's going to be. So in the indefinite future, if a country is requiring a vaccine, how do we travel with kids?
Mhm. Interesting.
Great question.
Okay, Katie, next one.
I think we have time for one more question. So this one is really interesting about blending the safety with high touch luxury experience. So you all have talked a lot about still making sure that it's personalized and safe, but how do you see what services have been introduced, let's say in 2020, in the start of 2021, that will continue to extend into 2022 and beyond?
Can I just start before Ben jumps in, because he has answers? Why do they have to be mutually exclusive? It just annoys me so much that people think it's a give or take. Ben, go for it, because I'm sure you have a lot to say.
No, I totally agree with you, Jack. There's no question they can't be given, mutually exclusive. These two things have to operate in conjunction with each other. When this pandemic first hit, some of the questions that were asked of the industry as a whole were, if the economic realities of this difficult, are you going to change your entire staffing model? You're going to take out room service. You're going to stop serving drinks by the pool. We took a decision, as most of the luxury brands did, to not allow that to happen. And we haven't changed our service proposition at all. And nor will we allow the extra steps that we have to create a kind of a buffer zone in our guest experience. So our guest experience scores have actually gone up during the pandemic. And the demands from our guests certainly haven't gone down. So, I think one of the keys to that is to make sure that labor continues to be deployed in the correct places, well-trained, great people, creating great guest experiences. But most of all, as an industry, we can't allow this to reposition the two things. And, I think high-touch service, that I think John's question was, high-touch service is even more important now, maybe not the strict definition of touch, but the special touches, for sure, will just be really, really important going forward. And we need that. We need that to explain the role of luxury hospitality going forward.
Shannon, we'll give you the last word. So thank you.
I think Ben nailed it. And Jack, they're not mutually exclusive. I think we've all successfully found ways to deliver wonderful service, personalized service, deliver on guest expectations, exceed guest expectations while doing so safely. And I think it's, the industry has figured this out. The luxury industry has figured this out pretty quickly and very effectively. I think some of those practices will continue as long as they need to. But it's not something, in my opinion, that is negatively impacting ultimately the guest experience. I mean, I think Ben said it great that his guest satisfaction scores actually have gone up. So go ahead, Jack.
From my perspective, I think the amount of goodwill and trust that is being built now, or validating the trust, has always been like Four Seasons are leading a huge amount of goodwill and trust. that's going to have ripple effects for years to come. People won't forget what you're doing, and especially if they've been to other companies or brands and see what they're not doing, and there are plenty of them that aren't, they won't forget that, and that's going to go a very long way.
Thank you, Jack. That's a great point. Kathleen, I think I'll give you the last word because they're all friends of yours. They only showed up for you, and we're so grateful that you joined up with us. So thank you all. But Kathleen, over to you.
I'd just like to summarize our very engaging and insightful conversation by thanking all of you. And it's clear that there's a great affection and commitment to the luxury hospitality industry and the tremendous experience that we provide to our valued guests. So cheers to all of you and to a very, very positive 2021 and beyond. And thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
I can't wait to give everybody a big hug in person.
Same.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.